All right, so today we're going deep on something a little different. We're always talking about cybersecurity, right? And online safety and all that. But have you ever stopped to think about all the stuff happening behind the scenes online that doesn't involve, like, actual people?
You mean like the bots?
Yeah, bots. But also, way more than that, we're talking about non-human identities. All those digital entities that are, well, not human, but are increasingly running the show.
It's kind of a blind spot for a lot of folks.
Huh.
We're so busy worrying about our passwords and two-factor authentication, but these non-human identities, they often have the keys to the kingdom. They've got way more access to sensitive systems than we ever will.
So, like, what are we talking about here? Give me an example. What kind of non-human identity am I running into on a daily basis without even knowing it?
Let me ask you this. When you use your banking app, how do you think it connects to your account?
I mean, I assume it's through some kind of secure connection.
Exactly. But it's not you making that connection directly. It's a non-human identity. Think of it like a digital representative that acts on behalf of the app.
Huh. Okay. And this is happening all the time.
All the time. Services running in the background of your computer, APIs that allow different apps to talk to each other. It's all powered by non-human identities.
Yeah.
Even your smart thermostat.
Wait, my thermostat has a digital ID.
Yep. It needs one to connect to the internet, receive updates, and do all those smart things that thermostats do these days.
Okay, that's kind of creepy when you put it like that. But are these things really that vulnerable?
Oh, absolutely. Maybe even more so than our personal accounts. Because they need that high-level access to function, they're prime targets for attackers.
So, like, what's the worst-case scenario? What could a hacker actually DO with a compromised non-human identity?
Let's go back to your banking app. Imagine a hacker gaining control of a service account that has access to, well, the entire bank's database.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's not good.
It's not. Or think about a network of IoT devices, like those smart thermostats we talked about. A hacker could hijack them and launch a massive DDoS attack.
DDoS attack. Remind me what that is again?
Basically, they flood a target server with so much traffic that it crashes, taking down websites, services, even critical infrastructure.
Okay, now you're just trying to scare me.
A little bit, yeah.
Oh.
But it's important to understand the stakes here. We're not just talking about personal data anymore. We're talking about the security and stability of entire systems.
All right, I'm convinced. But how do we even begin to manage this? If these non-human identities are everywhere, it seems like an impossible task to keep track of them all.
It's a challenge, for sure, but it's not impossible. That's where privileged access management comes in, or PAM for short.
PM. Lay it on me.
Think of PM as a super strict bouncer for your most important digital assets. It manages the entire life cycle of these non-human identities, from the moment they're created to the moment they're deleted.
So it's making sure they only have access to what they absolutely need, like putting them on a very short leash.
Precisely. And PAM doesn't just control access, it also monitors for suspicious activity. One of the coolest features is credential rotation.
Credential rotation, what's that?
Instead of having static passwords that can be stolen and used forever, PAM automatically changes them at regular intervals.
Ah, I see. So even if a hacker manages to snag a password, it's only good for a short time.
Exactly. It makes it a whole lot harder for them to do any real damage.
That makes sense. So it's like a constantly evolving defense system, always one step ahead of the bad guys.
That's the idea. But it's important to remember, PAM is only as good as the policies and procedures that are put in place.
Right, I was going to ask about that. Have there been any, like, real-world examples of things going wrong, even with PAM, or maybe because of a lack of PAM?
Oh, plenty. There are tons of cautionary tales out there. Like, just a few years ago, this major retail chain suffered a massive data breach.
A data breach? What happened?
Well, hackers got in through a compromised service account, one that belonged to a vendor. Millions of credit card numbers stolen.
And they didn't have PAM.
They did, but it wasn't properly implemented. And in that case, it could have been a game changer. Potentially prevented the whole thing.
Wow. Okay, so this isn't just hypothetical. The consequences can be huge.
Absolutely. And again, we're not just talking about data anymore. We're talking about the security and stability of whole organizations or even critical infrastructure.
Okay, this is getting pretty intense. But before we totally spiral into cyber panic, I want to break this down for our listener. What are the key takeaways here?
I'd say the biggest one is this. We can't ignore non-human identities anymore. They're not some abstract concept. They're integral to how our world functions. And the way we manage them will determine how secure or insecure our future is.
So it's not just about businesses needing to get their act together. Individuals need to be aware of this too.
100%. You're interacting with these non-human identities every day, whether you realize it or not. And the choices you make, like the apps you use, the devices you connect, they all have security implications.
All right, so we're all in this together. We've laid some groundwork here, but I'm already wondering about how do we actually manage these non-human identities effectively? It feels like we're just scratching the surface here.
You're right. We are just getting started. Yeah, managing these non-human identities, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. It really comes down to like understanding what your specific risks are, and then you can figure out what safeguards to put in place.
Okay, that makes sense. But where do we even start? I mean, just thinking about all these digital entities out there, it feels kind of overwhelming.
I get it. It can be a lot to wrap your head around. The first step, though, is pretty simple. Take inventory.
Inventory, like I'm stocking shelves at a grocery store.
Kind of. But instead of cans of soup, you're taking stock of all the non-human identities in your environment.
So every app, every service, every smart thermostat.
Exactly. You need to know what's out there, what each identity has access to, what kind of privileges they hold. It's like taking a head count, but for your, digital workforce.
Okay, so inventory is step one.
Got it.
What comes next?
All right, so once you know what you're dealing with, it's time to put some policies and controls in place. And this is where PAM really shines.
PM, right, the super strict bouncer.
That's the one. PAM can really help automate a lot of this, by the way. Discovering and managing and monitoring all these identities. So you're not doing it all manually, thank goodness.
So it's like having a digital HR department for your non-human workforce.
Exactly. And just like you would with human employees, you need a clear process for managing their life cycle, how they're created, how their access is managed, and eventually how they're deleted.
Okay, so we've got inventory, we've got policies, we've got PAM helping us manage it all. But let's get down to brass tacks here. What are some practical things businesses can do to start managing these identities better?
One of the most important things is enforcing something called the principle of least privilege.
Least privilege? What's that?
It means that each non-human identity only has access to the information and systems that are absolutely necessary for it to do its job, and nothing more.
So it's like giving them just enough rope to do their job, but not enough to hang themselves, or I guess hang the entire company.
Exactly. It's all about minimizing the potential damage if something goes wrong. And it's not just about limiting access. You also need to be monitoring activity for any red flags.
Red flags, like what?
Well, PAM solutions can actually track what each non-human identity is doing, and they can alert you to anything suspicious, like unusual login times or attempts to access unauthorized data.
Oh, that's pretty cool. But this all sounds pretty complex. Is PAM only for, huge enterprises with massive IT departments?
Not at all. There are actually PAM solutions out there for organizations of all sizes, from small businesses to, those global corporations. And a lot of providers offer cloud-based solutions now. So they're actually pretty easy to set up and manage, even without a dedicated IT team.
Okay, so it's not just for the tech giants then. Good to know.
Right. The point is, if your organization relies on technology, which, let's face it, most of them do these days, you need to be thinking about this stuff.
For sure. So let's say I'm a business leader listening to this and I'm convinced that PAM is the way to go. What's the most compelling argument I can make to my team? What's the bottom line here?
I think the bottom line really boils down to risk mitigation. Implementing PAM can drastically reduce the risk of those costly data breaches. System outages, compliance violations, no one wants to deal with that. And in today's world where cyber attacks are just becoming more and more sophisticated, well, that peace of mind is pretty invaluable. Think of it like an insurance policy, Yeah. But for your digital assets.
Sold. I'm in. But we've been talking a lot about businesses here. What about us regular folks? Is there anything individuals can do to protect ourselves in this whole non-human identity landscape?
Definitely. The first thing I'd say, be mindful of the apps you're using. What kind of permissions are you giving them? Do you really need that calorie tracking app to have access to your location data, A&D, your contacts?
You're right. I never really think about those permissions. It's just easier to click allow and move on.
I know, we've all been there. But those little choices, they can really add up. And another thing, be careful about connecting to public Wi-Fi networks, especially with your smart devices, those smart home gadgets. They can be vulnerable. You never know who's lurking on that free coffee shop Wi-Fi.
All right, noted. Taking it all in. I'm starting to feel like I need a digital detox after this conversation. But seriously, this has been eye-opening. We've covered the what and the why of these non-human identities, and I think we've even touched on the how a little bit. But I have a feeling things are about to get even more real.
You're reading my mind. Sometimes, the best way to learn is from the mistakes of others. So should we dive into some cautionary tales?
Let's do it. Bring on the scary stories. Let's hear about some real-world breaches that'll make everyone think twice about their digital security. All right, so we're back. And if you're just joining us, we've been diving deep into the world of non-human identities, all those digital entities that are, well, kind of running the show behind the scenes.
And we've learned that they need serious protection, right?
Exactly. Especially since they often have way more access to sensitive systems than we do, but I have a feeling we're just scratching the surface here.
You're right. This is just the tip of the iceberg, really. Cybersecurity is always evolving. The threats we're facing today, they're going to look totally different tomorrow.
Okay, so let's put on our futurist hats for a minute. What's on the horizon? What are some of the emerging trends in this whole non-human identity security thing that, I don't know, have you excited or maybe a little bit terrified?
Well, one trend that's definitely got my attention, both in a good way and a maybe slightly scary way, is the rise of AI, artificial intelligence,
Right.
and machine learning, ML.
Right, AI. Everyone's talking about it these days. But how does that play into all of this?
Well, we're already seeing AI and ML being used in all sorts of security solutions, including PAM.
So it's like having a super smart security guard on duty, one that can learn from past attacks and anticipate future ones.
Exactly. AI and ML can help automate all sorts of tasks, and they can spot anomalies that humans might miss. They can even predict threats before they happen.
Okay, that sounds pretty awesome, but there's got to be a catch, right?
Of course, there's a catch. Hackers are also using AI and ML to, develop more sophisticated attacks.
So it's like a cyber arms race.
It is.
Yeah.
But the good news is, well, the good guys are using AI and ML too to develop better defenses. It's a constant battle, but I'm optimistic. I think we'll come out on top.
I like your optimism. So AI and ML are definitely game changers. What else is on your radar?
Another big one is the cloud.
The cloud.
Yeah. Identity and access management, IAM. It's becoming even more important as more organizations move their operations to the cloud.
Because the old ways of doing things don't really work in the cloud.
Exactly. It's like trying to, fit a square peg in a round hole. We need cloud-native IAM solutions, ones that are specifically designed for that environment. They're more scalable, more flexible. They integrate with other cloud services.
Got it. So businesses need to make sure they're using the right tools for the job. But what about individuals? Anything we can do to, stay ahead of the curve?
Absolutely. First and foremost, stay informed. Keep up with security news and trends. Make sure you're aware of the risks. Knowledge is power, right? And be super careful about the information you're sharing online. Hackers are getting really good at social engineering these days. They can use those little bits of information you post to, compromise your accounts.
It really is scary how much we just put out there without even thinking about it.
I know. We need to be way more mindful of our digital footprint. And remember, security isn't just about protecting yourself. It's about protecting everyone, your family, your friends, your whole community. We all have a part to play.
That's a great point. Any other words of wisdom for our listeners before we wrap things up?
Just remember that security isn't a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process. You got to be vigilant, you got to stay informed, you got to adapt. The threat landscape is always changing.
And it sounds like PAM is a pretty crucial part of that process, especially as our world becomes even more reliant on all these, non-human identities.
Absolutely. PAM is not like a magic bullet or anything, but it is a really powerful tool. It can help organizations of all sizes manage those risks that come with, relying on all these digital entities.
Awesome. Well, I think we've covered just about everything there is to know about non-human identities. At least for now. Who knows what the future holds?
Who knows? But I think it's safe to say it's going to be an interesting ride.
That's for sure. Well, hey, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. This has been really insightful.
It's been my pleasure. And thanks to all our listeners out there. Stay safe.
And remember, if you're feeling overwhelmed by all of this, don't hesitate to reach out to an expert. There are people out there who can help you navigate all of this and make sure your digital world is as safe and secure as possible. Until next time, stay curious.